correspondent. Good.
I like that. Ed's quick on his feet.
He
you know,
is.
Can't get anything by Ed. All right, let's bring in Michael Warren. He's joining us. He's the staff writer for the Weekly Standard. And Mike, Ed was just talking a little bit about what Senate Democrats are doing. And he said a lot of it's tied to the 2014 election. What impact can the Senate Democrats really have? Could there potentially be changes to the health care law with the momentum that's gathering in the Senate?
Look, it's possible. The Republicans are, of course, all sort of united in delaying and repealing and changing whatever the law is currently, and now they've got these allies in Senate Democrats like Mary Landrieu. So we'll see. But the real issue here is that the problems with Obamacare aren't going away anytime soon. Even if they fix this website, which presumably they will, I don't know if they're going to be able to finish it by the end of November, like they say. But even if they do this and people are able to log in and get health insurance, they're going to find out that, as you've been saying on this program, that their premiums are going to be higher. They're going to be having fewer options to buy health insurance. And so as a political issue, it's not going to go away in 2014 once they fix this website.
We're also seeing there's some concerns from the White House. The House Oversight Committee obtained some memos that is apparently from the war room at the White House, where aides are saying, listen, we're actually concerned once the website works, when people actually see what the reality is, they're going to be disappointed. How are we going to deal with that? Dealing with it on a political level, Michael, is so different than actually the rest of us having to deal with it from now until kingdom come. So what are our viewers supposed to think? Is this sort of a wait and see at this point to see what any lawmaker does, or is the path already set for the next several years because of the way that this law is structured?
Well, obviously, if things change after the 2014 elections, if Republicans take over the Senate like they want to, like they haven't been able to do for the past two cycles, then they may be in a position of strength so that they could actually make some changes. And look, President Obama has already delayed the employer mandate. Some in Congress say he shouldn't have done that. He should have done it legislatively. But as a political issue, this isn't going away. And so chipping away at it, we'll see if Mary Landrieu, she just introduced a bill to allow people to keep their health care plans if they like it. It's difficult to say whether they can actually achieve anything policy-wise, except for delaying it. And delaying it is certainly a political winner these days, especially in those red states like Louisiana, like Arkansas, where Mark Pryor is running for re-election, or North Carolina, Kay Hagan, Alaska, Mark Begich. These folks are going to be really interested in finding any way they can to stop the sticker shock from affecting their jobs.
So the impact on elections is something big that we want to talk a little bit more about. Mike, if you would just stand by for a moment, we're going to turn to one of the big races that we're watching, and we're awaiting the outcome of one of the most closely watched races, really, of the year, the battle for governor of Virginia. You have Republican Ken Cuccinelli and former DNC chair Terry McAuliffe locked in a close race. Some say close, some say not. We'll see what our chief political correspondent Carl Cameron says. He's joining us live from the campaign trail in Falls Church, Virginia, with more. So, Carl, they say this race could have national implications. We were talking a little bit about that with Mike. What does turnout look like, and does it appear to be some sort of national referendum, if you will, based on what was going on in D.C.?
Sure, each side would like to make it a referendum, but on very different issues. And if turnout's an indication, it may not be working so well. It's been very, very low. Here, George Marshall High School in Tyson's Corner, which is essentially Falls Church, Virginia, Northern Virginia, big concentration of voters, many of whom were affected by the government shutdown and what happens in Washington, are watching closely, and yet the turnout isn't that much. In fact, it's going to be less than half of what came out for the presidential election last year. Ken Cuccinelli has been making the argument really since the launch of healthcare.gov very aggressively, or rather the abortive launch of the healthcare.gov, that Obamacare is the issue about which this referendum vote, this race for governor, has actually decided. And he's not new to it. As the first attorney general in the country to actually file suit against the Affordable Care Act and the Obama administration, he's been saying it all along. But when the launch went bad, he really ramped it up. And here's a little bit of what he had to say today after he cast a vote for himself a little bit west of here in Nokesville, Virginia. Watch.
Obamacare has been a big part of why this race is a horse race at this point. I was the first to fight it, and Terry McAuliffe didn't think it went far enough. So it's a pretty stark contrast. If people want to send them a message in Washington on Obamacare, their vote today is one way to do it.
Cuccinelli's been steadily trailing in the polls, although his margin has been steadily shrinking. It had been up close to double digits, and in the last few days it was down around 5 or 6 points, and he has the trajectory and momentum, and he likes to say the energy and passion of a very, very loyal following. Cuccinelli managed to not only unite Tea Party conservatives, but social conservatives as well, and he's looking for a big, big turnout of them, really motivated voters in what is otherwise a low turnout race, Jenna.
And the state of play right now, Carl?
The state of play right now is Terry McAuliffe hopes that he gets just the opposite. The Democrats come out in a very big way, and he argues that the referendum, and he has been making that argument, should be against the Tea Party and sort of shut down politics, arguing that Ken Cuccinelli is a conservative, and the conservative movement in the country is not just bad for Virginia, but the rest of the nation as well. Here's him, Mr. McAuliffe, after he voted this morning, not far from here in McLean.
They want folks to work together. They want folks to work together in a bipartisan way. They're sick and tired of the dysfunction that we have in Washington. They're angry over the shutdown. There was no reason to have that shutdown.
So you have two candidates talking about national issues. Most of this campaign, they spoke mostly about themselves, and it was a very nasty personal attack campaign. In the last 2 weeks, each side has adopted sort of a national narrative in hope of setting the stage. 2014, but there's a lot of primaries for both parties before we get to the general election battle, and these guys have essentially been arguing nationally, hoping that Virginia voters will embrace it. We'll find out the winner of this debate in just a few hours when the polls close in the Old Dominion. Jenna?
Imagine that, politicians talking about themselves. That's so weird. Carl, thank you very much. It's a race we're going to continue to watch. Michael Warren is back with us from the Weekly Standard. Michael, I don't want to forget, I mean, that was mainly focused on Virginia, obviously a big race for governor there. Don't want to forget it, though, about New Jersey. You have Governor Chris Christie expected to be reelected, no problem in that state. Taking a look at those two big governor races, which race do you think has the bigger national implications, and what do you think it means when we look ahead to 2014?
Well, obviously, in New Jersey, Chris Christie is clearly thinking about the next election after 2016 in the presidential election. In that sense, you know, what happens? The margin that Chris Christie will get, everybody expects him to win. It may be by 20 points. It could be by even more. We'll certainly have people talking the next day, starting tomorrow, about that Christie presidential campaign. The Virginia race, on the other hand, is a little harder to sort of handicap. It's a really unusual race with Terry McAuliffe being ahead, despite the fact that in the last 9 Virginia gubernatorial races, the winner of the governor's race has always been from the opposite party of the sitting president. So that's unusual right there. And then having this whole national discussion about shutdown politics, about Obamacare politics, it's harder to sort of look at the national implications of a race that doesn't really follow any of those previous guidelines.
Michael, great to have your perspective today. Thank you so much.
I want to take you now to another closely watched race, the GOP primary runoff in Alabama. It will fill a congressional seat